Hello, friends. My name is Chantelle Hoffmann, and I am honored to be one of the instructors for the Mont Blanc Inspire Writing Series. We're going to give a little preview of where we are going. Here, this poem here is written in copperplate. This is a little bit more embellished copperplate, but this is still the basic structure. All these lowercase letters are still the basic structure of what we're going to learn today. Let's look at this quickly. This is our exemplar, which is our calligraphy word for this is the way an alphabet looks. And I want to show you what makes this different from something like modern calligraphy, which is also written with a pointed pen nib. The key to copperplate is the word consistency. Okay, so as we make our letters, we are going to aim for a few different things to be consistent. The first thing to notice is the height of our letters. So there's a baseline that these letters are all resting on, okay? And the majority of the letters, other than the ones that are tall letters, are all the same consistent height to them, okay? This is called our X height from the baseline to this waistline or header. See how they all fall in that space. So they're not bouncing up and down. Modern calligraphy likes to dance and it's going to be going up and down above those. But these, we're really going to aim for that consistent height. The other consistency that we'll see across our letters is a consistent slant. They are all going to slant the same, if I've done this correctly. Okay, so copperplate is written with anywhere between a 52 55 degree slant. A quick tip for you guys, if you are right-handed, you're going to turn the paper so that the slant lines are coming right towards your body. And that will help you just, as you're writing the same way you would if you're writing up and down, your hand's still making the exact same motion, but now your hand will be pulling on that slant line. If you are left-handed, you're actually at a slight advantage here. If you are an underwriter, we'll just slightly tilt your page clockwise. And then you can make those strokes like that. If you are a side writer, you might have to turn your page as much as 90 degrees to the right. And there's our hook writers, where your wrist is hooked like this for left-handed. Back to our characteristics here, we've got a consistent slant, a consistent height. And then if you look at like all these loops, they all kind of look the same. And the distance between these strokes all looks the same. So we're going to be working on consistent size of the letters as far as these basic strokes. What I do want you to pay attention to is I've got these little arrows in there. And the arrows are going to be important when we make these basic strokes because of this next rule here, the shading rule. When our pen, or the nib of our pen, is moving in an upward motion, it will be a thin line. And when we start to move in a downward motion is when we're going to add that thickness. Okay, we don't necessarily slam this thickness on right away, but that's where we're going to think thick down, okay? The way to get that thickness is you're going to just push harder on your pen. So when let's do this L here, we're going to do our basic strokes, which I will teach you in a moment, but I'm going in upward motion, I'm going in upward motion. Now I would push harder on my pen, which I'm not doing right now with this nib. And then I'm going upward. That would be light pressure, okay? So that's only if you're using a flexible nib. What if you are using a monoline nib or this is an extra fine here. I do not want to trash this nib. I want to keep it safe for generations. And so I'm going to protect it by not pushing really hard on this nib, but I still want this beautiful copperplate look. How do I get that? So for me, especially when I'm writing relatively small, the best way for me to get this thick line is to just retrace. So I'm going to think about when I'm making my strokes, anytime my pen is going in a downward motion, I will go back through and I will just retrace where my pen was moving in a downward motion. Up, down, up. This would have been down, up, down, up. So you get the idea. Anywhere my pen was moving in a downward motion, I can add in that thickness just by retracing it. If you are writing larger, there's another trick here. I just leave a little bit of a space between my strokes, and then I can fill them in. I'll do a larger example for you. Go back to my medium nib. And I'll do a this letter U. I would just leave spaces between. This would be my entry stroke, and an underturn, and another underturn. And see how I left these gaps so they're not really magnetized together? Then I could go in and add those strokes together and fill it in to give it a faux calligraphy effect. I feel like faux calligraphy is never usually going to look quite as graceful. It's a little bit harder to get that done really, really well, especially when you're adding these thickened lines like that. So that's where I like to personally just retrace, especially with fountain pen ink. It adds that darker color, and you can make that look really, really elegant. We're going to focus on this entry exit stroke. This is just a gentle up curve. You guys can trace that. The full pressure stroke, this is great just to practice having parallel lines along that slant line. Then we have this overturn, and they seem so simple. As you practice these guys, we are going to think about really trying to make them all exactly the same width. This is overturn, starts at the bottom until it's thin, and then our thick stroke would be this second part. That's where you can retrace. For the underturn, it starts at the top, and it's going to be that scoop. It's coming down along the slant line and then up along the slant line. So those lines are both parallel with each other and with the slant lines here. And because that's a downward stroke, this is where we would retrace that part. Okay, and again, that beautiful space in between our eyes looking for. We've got this compound curve here, which is just going to go, it's going to go up along the slant, down along the slant, up along the slant. And those spaces, the counter white space that we made, are going to be the same distance apart. The thick stroke there, you kind of wanted to taper it out at the end there. This is our ascender loop, so letters like H and L and K have this one, and the trick to this stroke is that it starts right there. So I'm coming out and then around, finishing that nice oval top, and now down along the slant line. And the exact same thing goes for our descender loop. This stroke starts up at the header. It's going to come down along the slant, curve when you get to the bottom, nice big open loop. Okay, and this, again, this space here, that width, you can imagine that little oval sitting in there. So if we're going to do the letter M, which I will show you the formulas for these later, but we're going to do an overturn. Go ahead and do one on your page. Next to it, we'll do another overturn. They should look exactly the same. Then we're going to do the compound curve that goes up, down, and up. Okay, so that's an M that we've deconstructed into its little parts. Now we're going to pretend like they're magnets and stick them together. So we're going to do the same strokes. Overturn, overturn, compound curve, and you now have a letter M. Copperplate has entry and exit strokes built in. So if this letter T, we've got an entry stroke and an exit stroke. The letter I, entry stroke, exit stroke. Those are how the letters are going to connect together. And the exit stroke of this letter is going to become the entry stroke of this I. So essentially, I can get rid of, that stroke. This exit stroke of the I is going to become this entry stroke of the T. So I'm going to get rid of that. Now we're going to splice and reconnect. So we've got that overturn, overturn, compound curve. So that's the entry stroke to our I. So the next stroke for the I would be an underturn. That exit stroke of the I is the entry stroke to the T. So now I'm just going to do the next stroke, which is that taller underturn. And now we have a beautiful copperplate script where our I is appreciating this beautiful even space between all of these strokes. You could add those thick strokes in there later if you wanted as well. But all right, here's our artsy arithmetic. And you'll see I don't have them in alphabetical order, but I've got them grouped by similar strokes. The W has this other little form here. So if we look at our ingredients or our equation, we're going to go entry stroke plus an underturn plus an underturn. And then we've got this small little underturn that is going to go on the inside of the letter here. Okay, so it's going to go on the inside and underturn. With the W, this is still the exit stroke that would connect on to the next letter. So, for instance, if I was going to write the word win, that letter I, this exit stroke still connects as the entry stroke for the letter I. The letter V and the letter X, we've got, you guys can trace these, but I'm going to just demonstrate them quickly so I can get to some of the trickier ones. It's that same compound curve. Okay. And just like with that W, we've got an upper exit stroke. So it's going to come up. So just think of it as a small underturn. X is a little bit tricky, so I will show you this one. I want you to think about taking that same compound curve stroke, and we're just going to grab these two entry and exit strokes, and we're going to stretch them out just a little bit. So up along the slant line, down along the slant line, up along the slant line. So it's our slightly stretched out compound curve. And then I tend to go from the bottom, so I like to cross it like so. These here are based on this oval shape here. Okay, a lot of these letters have, whoops, I don't know if you can see it, have an oval in them, including the O, which is entry, oval, and an exit stroke. With these shapes, with the exception of the S, our little entry stroke is going to be shortened. Usually our entry stroke goes all the way up to that header line, but for this stroke, we're going to shorten it slightly, and I'll show you with the A, so that when we magnetize that oval next to it, it looks like that really smooth ski jump that just glides right up onto that oval. Otherwise, it would probably go up and be sticking at the top, which we don't want. So shorten entry stroke, add in that oval, and then an underturn that is going to brush just along the side of that oval. So now we've got those void spaces that are not cookies that have bites taken out of the side of them, okay? Really protecting those shapes in there. The E is a little bit different as well, so that's shortened entry stroke, and we're going to come out here and do a little loop like so. And I leave a little bit of a gap between the entry stroke and this little, very, very little, you see that small little gap there? So when I do the loop, this stroke comes in between it, and if we're adding that pressure stroke, it gets filled in just like that. Okay, the S, like I mentioned with the R, is another one where our entry stroke is going to go just above the header there. And then think about if you had like a letter C or that, you can imagine that oval in here. We're tracing along that side of the oval. And this little dot can go on the inside. You got an exit stroke, or it can rest right on top. That's actually my preferred method. I like to rest it on the top of that entry stroke. The exit there. Okay. Let me show you, we did the T already, so I'm going to show you a D. So it's basically like the A. We've got that shortened entry stroke plus an oval. Now the tricky part with the D is knowing where to start this underturn, okay? If I start it too far over to the left, I want it to touch right here. I want it to touch right there. And if I start too far over, now I've got a line that isn't on that correct slant line. It's too straight up. Okay, so the way to get that one to line up correctly is I touch here and then I just pick up my pen, but I'm going up along the slant. I just kind of trace where I want it to go. So when I do that underturn, it just kisses real nicely right there along the side. Okay, we've got a couple variations for P's. This is the traditional form where we've got this stroke here, which is a little bit different. It's basically like that full pressure stroke. In fact, you can do it as a full pressure stroke. That's this P right here. I did a full pressure stroke all the way down. Or you can gradually do here with the faux calligraphy, we're going to just do our line, and then we can trace that lower portion there to add the thickness. And then you would be adding that compound curve next to it. Okay, so that's the traditional version. Or if your eye likes to see that closed bowl to a P, let me do it down here. Entry stroke, full pressure stroke, coming down. And I just keep bringing that around until it kind of closes, or you can put a little dot there. Okay. I probably do this one more often than a traditional one just because I feel like a lot of people, unless they are experienced calligraphers, don't recognize that as a P. We don't want to leave out the gorgeous and graceful ascenders and descenders. So let's take a closer look at that. So these here are ascender letters that are basically going to be using that ascender loop. Sometimes that ascender loop turns into an underturn at the bottom. And sometimes that ascender loop will truncate like we practiced on that last page, where it just comes straight down on this slant line and stops. Let's practice the H. So we're going to do entry stroke, leave a little bit of a gap, and now we're doing that ascender loop. It comes down along the slant line and stops at the bottom. And then the next ingredient here is that compound curve. So it's going up along the slant, down along the slant, up along the slant. Let me show you the K and the F quickly. So the K is going to be that same entry stroke with the ascender loop. And then we've got this little stroke here, which is a little different. So it's going to start here at the bottom and come as if it was going to be an overturn. And then it's like, oh, just kidding. We're going to stop right there with a little fist. Okay. And then we add as if it then decide, oh, I do want to be a compound curve instead. So I think about this being the up, down, up of a compound curve. The F is an entry stroke with that ascender loop that's going to come down a bit further to that mid-descender line. So it's not all the way down to the bottom, but the mid-descender line. We'll have that thickening stroke here. And then it's got that exit stroke. Let's look at the Y more closely. So we're going to do up along the slant, down along the slant, up along the slant. So we've got that compound curve right down along the slant. Have a nice big curve that's going to touch just below that baseline. Okay, and then it gets an exit stroke. So I can add that thickening stroke where my pen was going in a downward motion. And that would be the letter Y. So let's go to the zoo, and we're going to do basically like an overturn that just kind of keeps coming around. And it's a little flat oval right there on the baseline, and it's going to curve out. Still touches just below the baseline, so it's obeying the rules there. So that we've got the Z, and we're going to add that thick stroke where we're going in a downward motion like that. I hope that you have picked up the idea of really those basic strokes are the key to having these letters look like they belong together and they're consistent. I truly love this script and I really love this community. Thank you for sharing your day with me. I look forward to seeing you all next month, and happy spring. I forgot to say that at the beginning, but hooray, spring is here. Hopefully you guys enjoy this sunshine and flowers that are coming our way. Bye guys.